Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I like to reflect upon the unpleasant stories from both EU and UK based citizens when travelling to the other's territories, and how tourism looks set to be another big Brexit loser if the government doesn't start normalising international relations. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I'm going to start off with something that was clipped from the BBC's Question Time programme by Femi, who's a prominent Brexit commentator. Many of you will know, I think. It was a woman going on about the Eurovision competition that we did rather poorly in recently. We tend not to do that brilliantly. Sometimes we do all right. We got no points this year. Now, I didn't watch it. I haven't watched it for a few years just because I don't really watch telly these days. Maybe our song was crap. I don't know. I've not heard it. And I've not heard the others, which is a comparison thing. It might be an amazing song, but if there's more amazing songs, then it's not going to win. And I'm also not going to deny a link between getting no points and our Brexit attitude. After all, I am old enough to remember when Eurovision went from purely judge-based scores to including public phone-in voting. And you could see the cultural bias. Countries were often very generous with their points for well-regarded neighbours, and much less so for countries which may have been historical enemies. It wasn't always the case, but there was a bit of a pattern. There's a reason I think Ireland holds the record for most wins. Everyone loves the Irish. Maybe not the Conservative Party. But most ordinary people are more than happy with a happy-go-lucky poetic people. But this woman's reaction to this, did she, thinking that this was all to do with soured relations, reflect upon the way that our politicians and media are constantly insulting our European neighbours? Did she go, well, it's no wonder really, we're always being very rude to them? Did she say that perhaps we need to mend a few fences after the unpleasantness of Brexit? No. Her reaction was that we should take our tourism away. More small-minded British exceptionalism there, as if tourism is a gift that we give to the Europeans. But let's have a little look at the realities of tourism. See, there are people like myself who aren't all that keen on travel. You know, when it comes to exploration, I am the polar opposite of Graham Hughes, put it that way. I generally avoid holidays. If I must go, I'd favour, and I have in the past favoured, a cottage in North Wales or North Yorkshire. Must have internet. They never have decent internet. But a lot of people like to travel abroad. Now, travelling very far away is very expensive and is either beyond the means of most people, or you have to make it a rare event. I had a colleague once, and he and his wife, what they would do is 3 years in a row, they would go on a cheap caravan inn or cottage holiday, and they would save up. And then every fourth year, they'd go to some far-flung place, have a really massive holiday, very expensive holiday. But most people will just book their package holiday to somewhere in Europe. You know, they like foreign holidays. European destinations offer a wide range of types of holidays, lots of different types of climate, depending on what you're interested in, lots of different types of cultures, whatever you want, Europe will do it for you. And it's a lot cheaper than going to a different continent, especially when you're at the northwest end of that continent. And it's like goods, really. You can't actually compensate for lost trade with Europe by selling more elsewhere, because it costs a lot more money to transport your goods and it takes a lot longer to arrive. Both of these factors make our goods less desirable outside of Europe than inside it. Exactly the same for people going on holiday. So anyway, back to that woman's comment. Take away our tourism. Now, what does that mean? Was she suggesting that our government make it illegal for British-based citizens to travel to Europe? I know it's hard to say with these dimwits, but I'll assume that's not what she meant. She probably meant it in a sort of collective agreement sense, you know, like a boycott. And in point of fact, there may indeed be a lot of people living in Britain put off by European holidays. I talked recently about how there is now a lot of bureaucracy to travel that simply didn't exist before. You know, you need proof that you can afford your visit, that you'll be returning by a set date and so on. And no more just popping off to France or Spain on a whim. Has to be properly planned out. Well, the same is true in reverse, of course, because these aren't EU rules. This is just third country rules. You know, there's a story in The Guardian right now of EU citizens trying to travel to the UK and facing the same restrictions, with additionally stories of fingerprints being taken into the bargain. Now, There are two parts to this. In terms of being expected to prove that you can afford to stay here and all the rest of it, that's no different for EU citizens travelling to Britain than it is for UK citizens travelling to the EU, or at least ones without an Irish passport. And again, you've very likely got people on both sides of this who were just used to travelling across that border, which was a largely seamless border for them for many years. All of a sudden, this has hit hard. And you can understand how British citizens trying to travel into Europe will think it's just the EU being mean-spirited. EU citizens trying to travel into Britain just think it's the British government being arseholes. In reality, from that point of view, that's just Brexit. That's just what came with Brexit. And a lot of people just didn't realise that. Obviously, the fingerprinting is over the top. It's already going to be a big enough barrier to tourism to be putting lots of travel restrictions in the way of potential tourists. But making them feel like criminals is going to hit it even harder. And in a tourism battle, how do these Brexit lunatics think that Britain wins? Like, if you have a Belgian tourist who wants to holiday in Britain, but the restrictions or the heavy-handed treatment puts them off, well, they can choose to go to France instead, or Germany, or Portugal, or Italy, or Spain, or Sweden, or Norway, or any number of other European destinations if they want that foreign holiday, but can't afford anything much further afield. But if a British tourist decides that the restrictions facing them for European travel as the citizen of a third country are too much, or they don't like their treatment, well, they're options. And don't go on about a European destination that isn't in the EU. These rules, not EU rules, these are because of the holidaymakers are citizens of a third country in respect of their intended destination. That is why the rules when you're trying to get to an EU country now closely mirror the rules when an EU citizen tries to get into Britain. You know, it applies for non-EU countries as much as EU countries, unless we get a special arrangement with them, which we don't have at the moment. Also, if we're going to make this about losing the Eurovision in such embarrassing circumstances, it wasn't just EU countries that gave us nil points, was it? It was everyone. Because that's how you get no points, when everyone decided your song was crap. Or your country, either way, whatever. And this is how Brexit battles are always going to work out. They always will work out like this. If we draw a line in the sand with Europe over anything, European citizens and businesses can just choose somewhere else in Europe to visit, live, or do business with. British citizens, no other option. They can stay home or, well, if they can't afford to travel further, that's it really, you stay home. Europeans lose one country with this tourism trade war. Britons lose 50. And then the Brexiteers will often bang on about the economic impact. It's going to hurt them, they'll lose all that trade. Well, so will we. And let's think about that. Let's go for the extreme example of, let's say, no Briton ever visits another European country and no non-British European ever visits Britain. Europe has a population of about 746 million people. If you take Britain's population out of that, it's about 682 million. Britain has a population of about 65 million. I'm purposefully talking about Britain here, not the UK. I'm taking Northern Ireland out because they're not really affected by this. They do what they like. So if Britain stops all tourism to the rest of Europe, we deny them a potential market of about 9.5% of their own population. If the rest of Europe did likewise, we lose a potential market worth about 1,052% of our population. Do you see the problem here? And this is the problem with Brexit. This is why any crap about them needing us more than we need them is crap. Yes, lost British business isn't good for European companies or countries or their tourism industry as a whole, but the reverse is far more devastating for us. We've had stories recently of German businesses throwing the towel in and stopping trading with the UK. Oh, cheered by the Brexiteers it was. That's because they're just going to concentrate on their own market instead, which used to include us. When a British business struggles to trade with Europe now, it can't just concentrate elsewhere. There is no elsewhere. An individual business can just focus on its own internal market, but that won't compensate for the lost trade because that market is way smaller. It also doesn't help the national economy because you don't make money by selling to yourself. Our economy needs exports. You know, we have to sell things to people outside of Britain to make money as a country and to maintain some slender grasp on the idea of people actually having jobs. There are over 2.5 million jobs in the UK in tourism. That is about 1/10 of our workforce. 1 in 10 workers works in tourism. And it will come as no surprise that the vast majority, and I mean the vast majority of these visits, come from European countries. Let them do without our tourism, you silly cow. How would we manage without theirs? Indeed, how are we going to manage if our heavy-handed customs procedures puts people off ever travelling here? But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.